and welcome to episode 5 of Behind the Beacon, where we dive deep into the news behind the news. I'm Daralyse, Lyons, Chief Revenue Officer at the Bucks County Beacon, joined by Emily Smith, owner and publisher, for our 5th conversation about all things Bucks County Beacon. So, hi, Emily.
Hi.
Yeah, and we were brainstorming a little bit over the last week about what do we talk about? I think one of the things that emerged, one of the themes, is how to run and operate a team virtually and how to sort of build community and cohesion and culture when everyone at the Bucks County Beacon is working from home or working out in the community, but we're not really together. So yeah, Emily, why don't we backtrack a little bit, because you started the Beacon with a
Yeah.
very, very lean staff and we've built a team. We've onboarded a few full-time people and then also some part-time people and freelancers. So can you talk about kind of how it was in the early days and how it is now in terms of the team and the team composition?
Yeah. Well, I would say when we started the Beacon, it's clear that timing had everything to do with it, because we started thinking about this in 2020
Yeah.
and we started putting it together in the beginning of 2021. And so it was still very much COVID times. And prior to COVID, I was doing a completely different job.
Right.
So, which was an in-person job. But I've always worked remotely. As a graphic designer, that is just that is par for the course. So I am not someone that is new to the general idea of remote work. I used to live in Arizona, and I had clients in Arizona when I moved back to Pennsylvania for 10 years, and you just have to figure it out. But, we're a digital world. So I think the interesting thing is that with the Beacon, we have to be in person for reporting,
Yes.
some of it. But through COVID, lots of things went online. Commissioner meetings, school board meetings, all those municipal government meetings each has their own live stream. So it's a lot different than it used to be. So when we started, there was me. There was me. There was Ben. And then eventually we ended up hiring Cyril.
Yeah.
There was a couple other people in between, and none of us were in the same location. And then we got some reporters, and they are in Bucks County and all of that. But now we also have some operations people. We have CJ, who does social media and some graphics, and she lives in Allentown, I think.
That sounds right. Yeah.
Bethlehem, Allentown, somewhere in that region.
Yeah.
And then we have Lynn, who does some operations stuff, and she lives in Harrisburg, because that is something that does not need to be in Bucks County at all. And then we have Dara, who lives near Bucks County.
Right. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Just outside of Bucks in Philadelphia. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would say that it has always, since we're online first, since we're digital only, it has always made sense for us to be remote, given how we started, when we started, all of those things.
Yeah, right. Well, and it's interesting. So my background, first I worked in business and finance for a little over a decade. Then I worked for myself for maybe, I don't know, somewhere between 10 and 15 years. Time folds in on itself. And when I was working for myself, I was working from home. I was working remotely. I would have client meetings in person, but I was working remotely. And then I had a job in news, in sort of the operational side of news, that was in the office 5 days a week. Actually, more like 6 days a week sometimes, just given the landscape of news. And then transitioning to this role, I spend a lot of time, the bulk of my time, working from home and working virtually. But I also go to Bucks County for meetings. We've been having some more in-person events. And I love a work from home culture. I feel like it leads to freedom and flexibility. And then again, I mean, I'm probably in Bucks several times a month, but those days can change, and it depends on meeting with donors and advertisers and reporters, et cetera. But I think the part that is something that we are working on currently is like doing the job seems to be very, very easy and effective remotely. Building a community culture is the piece where we have to sort of find ways to come together and compare notes. And so we recently instituted, I think maybe what, 5 months ago, 6 months ago, we instituted team meetings, Emily. So like, can you talk a little bit about
Yeah.
moving from the small team when it was just you and Cyril and you all would have meetings to now that it's like five of us, like kind of bridging those gaps?
Yeah, I think, when Cyril started, we started having meetings weekly, right?
Yeah.
So Cyril and I meet every week face to face remotely. And that was enough. Until I met some writers and found out they didn't know I existed, and then I was like, maybe that's not enough. And as we have added team members, it's become clear that there are lots of moving parts and no one's aware of everything that's going on,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And that is the key to building the team. Like as I've built the team, I've tried to find people that are self-starters, some might say lone wolves, people who can do it themselves and will work independently and remotely, but get the job done.
Yeah.
But the realization has become that each part of the business is intertwined, and the less it's intertwined, the less effective we are. So it's more effective if everyone knows what's going on, and we just have more moving parts now, which is why we've instituted a monthly meeting. It's not everyone, it's not all the writers. We haven't done that yet. That's coming soon.
Yeah. Well, September, we're having our fifth anniversary party. And so all
Yeah.
the writers will be invited to that. And we've started doing some virtual trainings and stuff for writers. And we're going to do more and more of that.
Yes, but I think the big struggle that I find is that we're all siloed and we
Yes.
need to be more cohesive as a team, because getting everyone behind the mission is how you succeed.
Yeah, absolutely. And for, the practical nuts and bolts of it, I think in many ways editorial drives everything, like, and yet the operational forces really need to be the engine or the propeller. I know nothing about vehicles, so I'm not sure why I'm going with this as a metaphor, Emily, but like I think that, for example, right, Cyril wanted to do more in the way of environmental reporting. It was really important for me to know that because we recently applied for and received a grant to do some environmental reporting. But if Cyril and I didn't have regular conversations, I wouldn't necessarily know like what funding is needed to be able to do the things that are important to us. We announced this in our email newsletter and we've announced this to the community, but he hasn't started yet. But Ben Bennett, who is our Report for America reporter and core member, he's now going to be doing education reporting. When Report for America put out their call for applications, it was really important for me on the revenue side to have a discussion with Cyril on the editorial side and content side and say, hey, what do we need? Like, what is going to make this organization the most effective? Because, and you and I have talked a lot about this, Emily, we talked about this in the last episode on reader revenue, but most funding opportunities from the grant side are not unrestricted. They are restricted. So the funding comes with certain limitations and requirements about how it is spent. So if I'm out there trying to get money for projects that we don't need at the beacon, that's actually going to be counterproductive. So it's been really important for me specifically to have a sense of what our editorial vision and mission and goals are so that we avoid the tail wagging the dog and we just trying to get money that then doesn't really benefit the organization. And then we're tied into certain deliverables that we can't fulfill. So it's like it's a whole thing. And I think understanding that is essential to making sure that I do my job effectively and in a way that supports editorial being able to continue to produce the wonderful pieces that we produce.
Right. Yeah, and I think that part of building the team, we talked about it previously with like when we talked about tech stacks,
Yeah.
which apparently is our least downloaded episode so far.
Yeah, people are like, "No, no
Oh,
technology."
sorry.
Yeah.
Well, sorry, you don't find it interesting, but I do. But we talked about it in tech stacks that part of it is, our tech stack and how we use different apps and programs to try to make the organization visible somewhere as an entirety. Like
Yes.
what are all the moving pieces?
Yeah.
So we have an editorial calendar that we are still trying to figure out the best way to implement it so that it can work well
Yeah.
for all of us. And, marketing calendar, and then there's like grant calendars, and
Yeah.
it's about all of these different things that we have to put together, and everyone needs to know, even if they don't need to know the nuts and bolts of every single piece of it.
Right.
They need the awareness of it is important, you
Oh,
know?
yeah. Well, and even just, I mean, there were 2 recent conferences that I attended. One, a collaborative journalism conference, and then the Lenfest conference that just happened in Philadelphia, and they were back-to-back conferences, and I think if we like, if there was no communication between us as team members, I'd have just been off the grid for a
Yeah,
week and a half, and nobody would have known what I was doing or where I was or if I was even doing the job, and so I think just at a very basic level, knowing like, okay, around election time, Cyril is going to be really tied up with election related reporting. And so perhaps if I have a question that can wait, I should wait until after that. If I'm
right.
attending a conference or doing some networking, maybe that's not a great time to reach out to me about something that is happening in July or what have you. And so I think, I remember there was one night, Emily, you and I worked until 1:40 in the morning. Not typical, but we were working
Not
on a grant
typical.
application until
Way
1:40 in the
typical.
morning. And we told the team, like, basically leave us alone, but in the nicest way possible. And so I think when you're working in an office, people can see what you're doing. They understand, like, oh yes, you're busy at this time, you're not in the office, but working virtually, if we're not proactive about those communications, it just people disappear. They ebb and flow, and you never really know what people are doing or where they are or if they're accessible.
Yes, and we have some team members who are very part-time, and their job is very part-time, but it's also a daily job. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
right.
So I think it's interesting like that when Cyril's like, "Oh, but I need this thing right now." You know?
Yes. Yeah.
And that becomes a like, where is so and so? Where are these people,
Yes.
at this time when I need them right now? Because we do not operate on the regular schedule of like, 9 to 5, everyone's sitting in the office. It's get your work done when you get your work done, and take your time when you take your time. We've instituted some I'll be available online during these hours. you know?
Right. Well, and from an operational standpoint, that's a really great, you know, point because so the Beacon, we've talked about it. We're a $400,000 a year news organization. We produce quite a lot of content for that $400,000 a year, and we generate grants. And we're doing a lot. Many of us, I think, are doing the jobs of 1.5 people. Emily, you're doing the job of 5 people. Probably. And so, but all that said, we don't have the infrastructure or the financial resources to have a full-time social media person.
Right.
Having a full-time social media person would help our revenue generation abilities, but we can't afford that full-time social media person
Right.
until we generate the revenue for that. So I think
Yeah.
we're at this weird inflection point as an organization where we can really only afford 4 full-time staff people and
Yeah.
then everyone else is supplemental, but there probably is like maybe 1 additional role or 2 additional roles that would be very valuable to the organization to have
Yeah.
on a full-time basis. We're just not there yet, and it would be irresponsible to hire those people without the funds to support or sustain them.
Yeah, I have spoken about it multiple times about jumping off a cliff. It
Yeah.
feels very much like jumping off a cliff, like hiring you was jumping off a cliff,
Yes.
financially for us, but you can't get the money without hiring someone that costs money to get the money.
Yes.
So there is like this, you have to get ahead of it and just be like, okay, we're doing it. And I like the smallest, most streamlined team possible. And so, yeah, CJ, our social media person, she works 10 hours a week, maybe.
Right. Yeah.
It's not a lot, but it takes a little piece off of our plate. But the problem is, my plate is now the rest of that.
Yes.
It continues to be the rest of that. I've removed the I have to post something every day situation from my life,
Right. Yeah.
so I
Yeah.
can do stuff. And I think it's, yes, if we had a full-time social media person, I mean, we could get more reader revenue, we could get more readers, all of those things, but that's a cliff we're not ready to jump off of yet.
No, not even a little bit. And I think that that's the really important thing to explain to people because, I think it can feel like, okay, these stories just come out of the ethers and I read them, but, and then there's these podcasts that just come out. And how does that happen? And how do I, know about this stuff or whatever? And I think both internally and externally, it's understanding that we have been able to automate some things but there are people doing this work on a daily basis and there aren't really enough people for the scope of work. However, to your point, like you can't, if you jump off too many cliffs too soon, you're going to plummet, right? So we are trying to build a sustainable business model, and that's really a huge part of my job, is being able to get
Yeah.
the funds to do all the things that we want to do.
I
Yeah.
mean, when I recently redid our org chart in the fall, maybe planning for the future, planning big picture stuff, because that's what I actually like to do. When I redid it and said, who do we actually need to have a fully fleshed out functioning team?
Yeah.
Because my name was at the top of multiple categories of work. Uh, it the budget would be over $1 million
Yeah.
a year
Yeah.
to have the right people in the right places and enough to have a fully functioning team
Right.
at its, like, the way it should be.
Yeah.
So I think that that is worth noting, is that, like, we're saving a ton of money because my name is at the top of 3 departments or whatever. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I mean, to the team point of things, like what I love about working for the Beacon, there are some limitations, certainly, in terms of, we don't have, there's no, I can't say like, oh, I'm delegating this stack of work to this person, because there is no this person. And I come from bigger organizations where there's a lot more, like, for example, we're a for-profit mission driven newsroom, but I came from a nonprofit newsroom where there was like a board, and then there was a board that board reported to, and there was a lot of, I think, political logistics and a lot of sort of interpersonal management that, at least in my opinion or experience, like detracted from being able to do the work they really, really love to do. And so I think kind of having a smaller team, like, I have fun every day working with you all. I mean, it's hard sometimes and it's really fun. And so I think, to the team part of it and the culture part of it, it's important. Like, how we build is really important. We recently hired Ben. Every member of our team got to be in on that hiring and interview process. There comes a point at which, if we grew too much, that would not make sense. But
Right.
but like, for the level of team that we have now, it was really important for everyone who's going to be working with Ben to weigh in on that process, and for Ben to kind of meet and vet all of us and make sure that he's excited about working with us too. So that, I think, is really nice about this
Yeah.
environment, like being able to build that rapport, because we all work as a team, but we also like work as little mini teams within the teams. I have conversations with Cyril that you're not part of or privy to. I talk to CJ, I talk to Lynn, I'm going to be meeting with Ben, and vice versa. So I think that, like, that is, to me, like, feels like a really essential part of each of us feeling very passionate about the work that we do and the mission and the vision of the Beacon.
Right. And tiny, I mean, it's very much startup culture
Yeah.
stuff. You have a tiny team, and when you add someone, it's not, I said this when we hired you. It's like we've created a new section of
Yeah.
the company. You know what I mean? So it's not just adding another employee.
Yeah.
It is expanding the capabilities of the company as a whole and changing the entire dynamic of the company,
Yeah. Yeah.
because there's a couple of us. And you're like, okay, next, one more person.
Right. Yeah.
Well,
Well, and then this is just occurring to me in the moment. So let's see, it might not come out as a fully fledged thought, but I see the community that we serve as part of this team. And we've recently started having more in person events, some sort of private invitation cultivation events for our major donors, and then some events that are like open to the public. The June 2nd event, the panel discussion. We're going to have another event September 24th, which is a Thursday, with the Beacon turns 5. And we're basically inviting everyone. It's $5, to come to this 5-year anniversary party, and there'll be food and mingling and networking, etc. But like, to me, that feels like an important part of the culture, especially because we're a local community news organization. And so, kind of, how do we fold the community into the team and the culture and the experience in a way that feels sustainable and authentic?
yeah, and I think that since the beginning, the community has been part of this because we didn't have enough funding to hire a bunch of reporters, and
Yes.
people had things that they thought needed covered, and they had opinions on stuff, and we're like, "Would you like to write that for us?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Would you like to tell us more about the community?" I think that that has been an integral part of the way that the Beacon grew initially. And on social media, our social media community is fairly large, I would say. I mean, not compared to other news outlets, but
Yeah.
for the engagement with the community,
Yes.
we have a tight crew of people in Bucks County that absolutely support us. And I think that they've always been there. But there has been, as we've grown, there has been some separation of that, like, we're just a news organization now, not this tiny little startup where Cyril knows the people that are reading the articles and, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that that is interesting. But, like recently I got an email about our June 2nd event from one of our readers, and she's like, well, I don't drive after dark. So what can we do about this?
Yeah.
you know, because I really want to be there. Also, this is what's happening in Montgomery County.
Yeah. 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 Right.
I think it's really great to figure out how to fold the community in. I would like to start doing more surveys
Yes.
of our community to see what is resonating, what the actual problems are. I think the interesting thing about surveys is you can ask the wrong questions,
Yeah. Right. Right.
and depending on the question you ask, you'll get entirely different answers. So, I think part of doing this podcast is trying to, personalize us as the Beacon as real people so that our readers understand that there's all of this in the background that we're thinking about and trying to figure out. And our emails and phones are always open.
Yeah. Right. Right. And that they can be part of that process of
Yeah.
co-creating, because we don't have all of the answers, and our priorities are shaped by our community. And something that I think community members can do, like, having nothing to do with money or donations or any reader revenue, but like, if you read an article about something that we cover in the Beacon that you think is interesting, share that on your social media platform. Tell a friend. If you're watching this or listening to this and you are not subscribed to our newsletter, go to our website, buckscountybeacon.com, and sign up, subscribe to the newsletter. I think the more that we can spread the word and increase engagement, the more that feedback loop
Yeah.
can sort of take hold. Because in the same way that we're building a virtual team and all of us have to be talking to each other, it's really helpful if community members talk to us. I read this article and it was great. is very, very helpful. But so is like, hey, there's this thing happening in the community and why haven't you written about it yet is also helpful. Or you covered this thing, but I don't like that you did this, and like, it's fine. Nothing,
Yeah.
any feedback or engagement is
Yeah.
useful and is valuable to us.
Yeah. I would say, the product and products that we put out
Yes.
are not precious. Do you know what I mean?
Right, right, yeah.
Oh, I'm not offended if someone tells me something's not working on the website.
Yeah, right, right. Or not working on our podcast. Like, hey, why'd you do that tech episode? We don't want to hear
Right.
about tech stacks.
Right.
Okay. Like
Yeah.
we'll avoid that. But let us
Right.
know. Let us know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's important to know, like, when we launched the Beacon and, I just, like, built the website and it was, like, MVP product, and I'm just like, "Yep, let's go, see how it goes." We had, like, 10 beta testers from the
Yes.
community, and I got very little feedback, and I was like, "Okay, so we'll just launch," and then it's like, "Oh, this is broken, this is broken, this is broken," and I'm
Yeah.
like, "Please," and they're like, "I can't see this on my phone," and I'm like, "Here is the information I would like regarding how you can't see it on your phone. What kind of phone do you have?"
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
Right. Well,
"What
one thing,
browser are you using?"
yeah, that happened recently that I think is like a good growth edge for us and was helpful in terms of getting feedback, constructive feedback. I had sent out a fundraising email. I send them regularly, that's part of my job. And I sent out a fundraising email and I got a response back from a community member who said, "Hey, you're asking me for money, but I sent an email to you all like a few months ago and nobody ever got back to me, so I won't be giving you money." And I was like,
Right,
"Oh, okay. Well, thank you so much for like responding and letting me know that. And let's figure out what happened." And it just happened that that person had happened to email an inbox that is viewed by a few different people, and I think someone saw it and probably thought that the other person was responding,
respond.
but the other person, it got marked as read, and so the other person didn't see it, and so but we got right on top of that, and that community member felt heard, and I gave them my personal cell phone number, and I think the other person who responded also gave them their their information, and it all worked out, and I felt really good about that interaction. Like, I didn't even care about the money. I want to make sure that
Right.
we're responding to community members, and that was just
Yeah.
something that we didn't have an internal process for,
Yeah.
because we hadn't ever heard that, oh, someone didn't respond to an email because too many people viewed it. And so now I think we're mitigating against that. Hopefully
Yeah.
it didn't happen before. Hopefully it won't happen again. But like, that kind of feedback is so valuable.
It really is,
Yes.
and, I think it's funny because, I watched that I watched that whole email situation go down, and it's funny because that email inbox it's me and Cyril that get
Yes.
those emails, right? But the reason we both get it is so no one misses it.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
So that's what's funny about it is, like, that was because we had missed emails in the past, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it's
Right.
like this process of, like, who should, because we get, like, that, uh, this is all as you grow the company, and I hate to keep talking about tech stack, but, like,
Yeah.
it's we have different email inboxes, but specifically for the Beacon as a whole, we have info@buckscountybeacon.com.
Yes.
And everyone sends us press releases there, which I don't know anyone else that if you've never been in a news organization or any kind of PR situation or anything, the press release flood that we
Yes.
get is pretty
Yes.
intense. We get so many, so many press releases, and it's once you're on those lists, then you're on those lists, and then
And a lot of them, just to be clear, are not relevant to what we do.
no.
So I know I am not responsible for managing this particular inbox at the Beacon, but I have managed inboxes at other newsrooms where there have been an inflow of press releases, and they will be about, something happening in Idaho that like we don't
Wow.
even city. Yeah, Europe, New York City, like, a very specific niche arts and culture like thing,
Something.
like an underwater basket weaver is coming to the Palladium or something. And it's like, that has nothing to do with what we do. And so there is a certain, it can be a time suck. And so I think we can't possibly read all those, respond to all of those, navigate all of those. And
Right.
so this is just a tip. If anyone wants to pitch us a story or whatnot, probably send that to Cyril directly, send that to Emily, send that to me, and personalize it a little bit. Like, know our names when you reach out to us. Make sure you've read The Beacon, and say something that is like a little bit more localized or specific to the experience, because I think we do get so many, dear sir, dear madam, with
Yes. I want to put a sponsored post on your website.
right. Yes. Yeah.
I
It's
like your
spam.
blog.
Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah. And so so it's a lot. It's a lot to navigate. So I appreciate like grace and compassion. And I also appreciate that this particular reader, it meant so much that she didn't just read my fundraising email, roll her eyes, and just not give us feedback. Like, it meant a lot that she took the time to write. And I feel that way about, I send out sometimes like event invitations. It means a ton if people take the time to RSVP. No, like, I mean, I just any
Yeah.
feedback is useful.
Right.
So,
You've received.
yes, right, right. Yeah, just knowing that like this was a complete loop of human interaction. Or ditto on the advertising side. Like, sometimes I'll talk to someone, have a really great meeting. They'll say, "Yeah, I'm really interested. Send me an email." I send them an email. They don't respond. 3 weeks later, I'll send them an email. I would just, a no is perfectly
Right.
fine. So I
Right.
really appreciate kind of
Right.
being able to have that rapport and build that rapport with people, especially sometimes if it's critical feedback, because I think that's hard for people to do and it really
Yeah.
speaks to their trust in us for them to say, "Hey, this thing isn't working," or "I would like to see more of this," or "This is what I need." And then we can dialogue about it.
Yeah, I think that's interesting about critical feedback because I talked to my daughter about this for those in the audience that don't know. My daughter is a junior in high school,
Yeah.
rising senior in another week or something, which is crazy to me.
Yeah.
And she takes art classes and I'm an artist. I'm happy to say that my daughter is going to be a professional artist, I believe.
Yeah.
She's much more talented than me. And she has recently begun having art classes. Recently, they had like a critique session for their projects. And she was like, I just, you don't want to say mean things and whatever. And I'm like, you don't understand. Like, art school is all about critique, right? It is the ability to both give and receive negative feedback
Yes.
and positive feedback, but to actually participate in the process of here's what I think and I want to tell you so that you understand and get a new perspective. So for me that is I think one of the most important things I've ever learned is the ability to take that feedback because if you can't receive the feedback, you can't make the thing better.
Oh, yeah. And I think I'm unfortunately over indexed on desiring critical feedback. So, I mean, I've written a bunch of novels and books, and then also worked as a journalist for a long time. And a huge part of that process is just being edited. Like, so
Right.
there's a line that I forget who said it, but like, be willing to kill your darlings, in the writing process, sort of like nothing is precious, to the point that Emily made. And so I really seek out, and also I grew up with a critical mother. Like, that's a subject for another another day. Talk to my therapist about that. But yeah, so I really seek out people giving me goals and benchmarks and telling me when and if I fall short. The positive feedback is helpful, so I know to kind of keep doing certain things. But the negative feedback has been so invaluable to my life. And so I crave that, and I'm not at all sensitive
Right.
about it. I mean, I would prefer if people be a little nice about it and not just cruel, but even cruel, like, send me your cruel feedback too. Like, I just want to know. And so, yeah, so it's interesting. And I wonder if that is part of what helps with the team aspect of things, is that you, Emily, really crave and appreciate both positive and negative, sort of feedback. I do as well. And then Cyril, sort of being in the editorial space for a long time, like, I think all of us full-time people, and then Ben, who is a reporter, so he's used to that. At least those of us who are full-time, like, are really kind of
Built that way.
built that way and seek
Yeah.
that, and don't seem to be hypersensitive about getting feedback, and really like to be on the receiving end of it so that we know kind of what to do more of and what to do less of.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that that is probably part of what makes the team work.
Yeah.
Yep. But internal feedback is always a difficult situation anyways. There's levels of feedback and
Right.
levels of, what's what's appropriate, when's it appropriate, who's it appropriate to, about what topic,
Yeah, right, right. So probably we won't be doing my employee review on this podcast. We're going to refrain from,
Right.
yeah.
Or in front of the rest of the team, right?
Right. Yes. Yeah. 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 That's great. Well, what haven't we? Is there anything else that you would like to say about sort of building a virtual culture, about inviting the community to be part of this culture that we are co-creating?
Yeah, I think that the hardest thing for me is this idea of, the website is the hub, right?
Mm,
But it is not the hub of our team. And I think that that is the interesting thing is like how do you make it's very meta, right? Like how
yes.
do you make a virtual world? How do you create the virtual space that mirrors what it would be like in a physical space?
Yeah. Right.
Sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for me, what I would want people to do is if you want to be part of this team, of this culture, of this community, we already consider you to be, part of that if you're watching this or if you're listening to this. And that feedback loop is important. So I would say, please, reach out to me, Daralyse at buckscountybeacon.com, if you have any thoughts, insights, ways that we can better serve you. Certainly, if you have some funds that you want to kind of contribute to our forward progression, please contact me. But also, like, come to our events if you can, especially the September 24th event. We're turning 5, and we would love for you to be part of that. So we will put a link to the event in the show notes for this episode, and we'll be sending out an announcement in our newsletter. So sign up to our newsletter at buckscountybeacon.com, and you can, find the sign up button on there, because we want you to be part of this team. And I'm happy to meet with anyone virtually or in Bucks County in person and just have a conversation over coffee, because it is a virtual culture and we are hyper local. And so we're navigating that line.
Yeah. And I would say like if there's we had talked previously about an ask me anything or ask us anything.
Yes. Yes.
Really would love people to ask us anything. Like let let the questions fly, Let the comments fly. Like
Yeah.
we want as much feedback as possible. As we said, we're both here looking for feedback. So tell
Yeah.
us, good, bad, ugly, whatever it is. We're
I
curious.
love that. And Emily, maybe we can, for our next episode, bring some of the questions that people ask at our June 2nd event. And maybe, like, we had a recent cultivation event and people asked us some questions there. And so maybe just kind of bringing some of the questions that we hear
Yeah.
to this podcast audience. And then also, if you're watching this or listening to this, like, send us your questions, because it helps us to think through some of these things, or if we've already thought them through but we haven't articulated them
Yeah.
to our readers and viewers and supporters, like, that's a gap too. And so I think that would be wonderful to do more and more of, and we can make sure that next time we come with some of those community questions, whether those are ones that you send in to us or ones that have emerged from the last couple events that we've done.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that idea.
Yeah. All right. I love that too. Well, thank you for joining us for this episode of Behind the Beacon. Please go to buckscountybeacon.com and get in touch with us if you would like. Support the Beacon if you would like. Send us your feedback. Sign up for our newsletter, because we are a team and we are a community, and we're so grateful that you're part of that.
Thanks.